Welcome to Bet On It, powered by Wager Talk TV. I am Kelly Stewart, and it is week 9 of college football. Where has the time gone? Well, this time we're talking big game breakdown, TNA with Ralph Michaels. We've got some barking dogs. Maybe the deli's back open, but we're going to ask Marco D'Angelo, and we know that Joe is fading that public per usual. And of course, VR will be back with some of that gold, and we're going to wrap it up with those best bets that went. Nice little, get out the brooms, guys. Nice little sweep again for us. Bad day to be a fader last Saturday. After a bad couple of weeks, at least on my end. Marco D'Angelo, how was your college football Saturday?
Well, my college football Saturday, obviously we hit the best bet here on the show, and I've had a very good season in college football. Unfortunately, my big play on Saturday did lose after going 3-0 on 5% plays. We had a stink bomb. Kelly, I should have called you and asked you about that Kansas State team. I stepped in front of them last week, and man, there's tire tracks all over my back. They ran me over, but it's been good. Had a big Sunday in the NFL, and so we're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, they ran a lot of people over. Luckily, I did not step in front of that freight train. I just didn't know what we were going to see. Full transparency, I did a clip with my good friend CT Betts, and he said he really liked TCU, and I said, I just can't do it. I got to see a little bit more. And boy, did we see it. We'll see if K-State can't cover that 17.5 in the week prior to paying Texas. Might be a little flat spot, if you will, off a TCU win. Texas on deck. I don't know. Got to ask the guy who's in charge of the sandwich shop, Joe Raineri. We get a lot of grief about you sometimes in the comment section and even sometimes on Twitter. Last week, you had some really nice winners, and we're still not getting any love. I don't understand it.
Yeah, and I'm losing a lot of sleep over it, Cal, let me tell you. Ole Miss, also fantastic last week. I think Auburn's still trying to score, but didn't get it done. But they did get it done there. So Ole Miss, once again, another interesting spot this week, along with a couple of dogs, I think, that might be barking very loud in week 9 of the college football season.
That's what I love to hear. I've got a laundry list of dogs this week that I think can win outright, and we'll get to them here in a little bit. But one that I kind of have my eye on, we'll see if they end up making my card. Saturday, Fox, 3:30 Eastern. Oregon heads to Salt Lake City. Oregon is a 6.5-point road favorite. 49, pretty much the total on the Wager Talk odds screen. Marco, I look at this Utah team. I was kicking myself for not backing them last week, but we know how hard it is to win as back-to-back underdogs. But do you think the Utes can do it?
Well, Kelly, you look at this one, and obviously the first thing that stands out is Oregon failed to cover the spread for the first time this year. They had a push the week before, and it's that game the week before that I feel had them not cover last week. They played that epic game with Washington. Both teams went up and down the field, and Oregon got there at the end only to watch Washington go back down the field and answer and get the win late in that game. It ended up a 3-point game. It was a push for the bettors, but it was an epic game, and it lived up to all of the hype. So for them coming out flat last week, you know how I look at games. That wasn't a surprise to me that they didn't. And Utah, well, I thought USC would bounce back at home. I didn't think they would let Utah go up and down the field. On the same week that Utah finally made it official, Cam Rising is done for the year. You know, every week they kept waiting, saying maybe next week, maybe next week. Well, they've pulled the plug on him. He will not play this football season. So what do? They go out and score their second highest total of the season, 34 points. But that's what happens when you face the USC defense. The USC defense is just putrid. There's no other way to describe it. And when you talk about USC in that offense or that defense, they let Utah go up and down the field. Utah now got to face Oregon. Yeah, the Utah defense is good, but you know what? They're going against one of the most prolific offenses, and we saw that they weren't able to shut USC down. The difference in this game is Oregon's just as good as USC offensively, as they're ranked 3rd and 4th in the nation offensively. But there is a huge, huge difference in defense, and I think that's the key to this game. Oregon's going to make enough stops to force Utah into field goals, where Oregon's going to cash touchdowns. And eventually they get separation, and it's going to force Utah to force the issue. And that's when bad things can happen to this Utah team. I like Oregon in this one. I know a lot of people are going to look at the home dog, but I like Oregon. I've got them winning this one by 14, 34-20.
Joe Raineri, how good is Bo Nix?
He's great as long as he's throwing the ball under 10 yards, which is pretty much all he does. He is not a guy that likes to throw the ball down the field, nor is Oregon, which is why instead of looking at the side here, I'm going to look at the total. It was 49.5 when it opened. It did shoot down to about 48. Looks like it's getting bet back up, but this is going to be, I think, one of those rare Pac-12 unders this week, simply because we already know the record of Utah at home. They don't lose at home. They haven't lost since, 3 presidents ago, it feels like, since they've actually lost at home here. And we saw, again, the defense against the reigning Heisman winner last week. Had a great game, didn't he? I don't think he threw one touchdown pass there, and they managed to be able to pull out the victory. Both of these defenses, I think, are two of the best in the Pac-12. I also don't see them running a whole lot of plays here. Neither, and although Oregon has lit it up here against some teams, they're not exactly one of the fastest-paced teams. So they're not going to be running up to the line of scrimmage, I think, against this Utah defense. I think Utah is going to run, and run again. And if they have the kind of success I think they're going to, I don't see this thing getting up in over 50. So if I'm looking at this game, I'm banking on both defenses handling business against the offenses and looking for the under in it.
All right, Joe, I'm going to kick it right back to you. Same time, different place. This one's going to be 3:30 Eastern on CBS. Georgia, 14.5-point favorite, neutral site game in Jacksonville. Total about 47 right now on the Wager Talk odds screen. I've been to this game. And every time somebody thinks Florida has a shot, what happens? They get absolutely and utterly boat raced. So I looked at it, I said, man, I think Florida's got a shot. So, of course, I'm going to pivot and lay it with Georgia. Joe, sometimes it's better to fade yourself.
Yeah, no, it really is, yes. And this is the largest cocktail party in Jacksonville that they ever see all year long. In fact, it's been a rough one for Florida. Last two, Cal, I think by combined 49 points. I think they've actually smoked them. So it has not been good. But I think it is fair to say this isn't necessarily the same Georgia team that we've seen over the last couple of seasons here. They did lose one of their best offensive weapons there in Brock Bowers, not going to be available. And we've also seen Georgia this season get off to extremely slow starts in games where they don't figure it out, even against lesser competition, until the second half. And asking Graham Mertz to repeat the performance that he just had against South Carolina, to do that in Jacksonville against this Georgia defense, yeah, I'm not ready to do that either. So, Cal, I'm looking at this game thinking, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Both of these teams have gotten off to slow starts in games. I think that's exactly what happens here again with revenge on Florida's mind. The defense has shown up at points here this year. I don't trust Graham Mertz, don't trust the Florida offense. And Georgia has already shown us a number of times this year they don't figure it out until the second half, and that's what I'm hoping happens again in this one. So I am looking 24 is the total in the first half of this game. I think this game is much closer at the break than people would like it to be. Ultimately, I think Georgia will win this game, but I don't think we're getting over 24 points. I think the defenses dominate early in this one. First half under for me.
Marco, I agree with Joe. They're also like the under. And now I know you're not a big totals player, but Georgia, if you look at the pace of play, bottom third of the country, both teams off a bye, means defenses are rested. Can I get you on board with this under?
I can't disagree. And I mean, I had to write that down because I'm absolutely shocked that Joe had a first half under. You know, I mean, I've never seen that played before, but good stuff from Joe there. But it makes total sense in this game. You know what else makes total sense? It's the outdoor cocktail party. How many cocktails would it take before I would consider betting Florida? Nah, there's not enough. I can't bet Florida. I'm sorry. I don't care if I'm drunk or not. I'm going to look to this Georgia team. Yeah, both teams had 2 weeks to prepare. Who do you got more faith in with 2 weeks to prepare for a big game. I think I'll go with Kirby Smart in that one. And I look at this Georgia defense in Florida. Yeah, they put up a ton of points in their last game at South Carolina. But you know what? They scored 41. They also gave up 39. I'm not impressed with the Florida defense at all. And if you go back to the first game of the season when they played a team similar defensive-wise to Georgia, that was Utah. And they only scored 11 points in that game. In Utah, without their star quarterback, Cam Rising, first game of the season, still beat them by 13 points. If you look at Florida's 3 road games this season, at Utah, they lose by 13. At Kentucky, they lose by 19. And then last week, or the last game 2 weeks ago, they did win. But as I said, they gave up 39 points in that game. They were lucky to win that game. South Carolina blew a big lead. This is not a true road game, but it's anything far from a home game as well. I'm going to go ahead and take Georgia. I'm going to lay the points. And here's the clincher for me. Georgia, the last 3 seasons, when they've been installed as a favorite of 10.5 to 21 points, 9-1 against the spread. As my buddy Joe says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm taking Georgia and laying the points.
All right. That was big game breakdown. And these glasses only mean one thing, and that is time for some TNA. My good buddy, Ralph Michaels. There he is, Mr. Ralph Michaels, the man with the pen, the stat daddy himself, back with a couple of things for us today. One, we're going to go over Jeff's streakers. We're going to talk about college football teams with their 7th loss. And we've got a couple of systems. But first, Ralph, I don't want to give Marco too much credit because you had a hand in it as well. But can you tell the Bet On It audience about our special promo this week?
Well, Marco had to twist Johnny Detroit's arm to allow him to get it up early, but we have a special which starts November 1st at Wager Talk. The rest of the year, under $59. Kelly, that's MLB World Series, NBA, NHL, college basketball when it starts, UFC, soccer, and of course college football and NFL, any sport your favorite capper does from now through the end of the year, through December 31st. It'll include most of the bowl games as well. $469. Plus, if you get it now, that's almost like a whole extra week free because you're viewing Bet On It right now.
All right, guys, that is under $59 a week. As Ralph said, NFL, college football, NHL, NBA, college basketball, and of course, any UFC, soccer, golf, or any other sport released by your favorite handicapper through December 31st, $469. Ralph, let's get into those streakers.
Well, let's take a look at Jeff Michael streakers, JM Sports CLE on Twitter. He posted this on Sunday. Kelly, New Mexico State. Now, I did update his streakers to include New Mexico State's cover last night. Who thought Jerry Kill would go to New Mexico State, turn that program around? They have now covered 6 straight games. And the Aggies are 13-3 against the spread their last 16 games. James Madison, Michigan, and Ohio State with 5 straight ATS wins. ATS losses, Southern Miss with 6 straight. Cal, Cincinnati, Hawaii, Kent State, Temple, and USC, all with 5 straight losses. Vanderbilt and LSU, 8 straight overs. Syracuse and Tulane, 6 straight unders. And guys, you asked for it, so yes, I include the streakers in the TNA guide each week.
Yeah, Ralph, I need a little, little pat on the back. I don't know if you remember, but New Mexico State, I drafted in our college football pool. They had a nice little outright underdog win last night at Louisiana Tech. And yes, I was up sweating it, texting CT bets frantically, like I needed to grind out New Mexico State with me. That's what Ralph's college football pools do to you. They make you cheer for teams that you had zero desire to ever know anything about.
And I have East Carolina, Kelly, that a team that is going to cost me the entire pool drafting East Carolina. So, bing!
I know this might be a little off topic, but when we were doing the live draft, I was in Vegas. Chris was in Vegas. Joe was in Vegas. Obviously, you are still in Vegas. And I was so miserable and not feeling the greatest, as you can imagine. And Joe took 3 teams from me. Not 1, not 2, but 3. And all 3 of them are absolutely and utterly abysmal. Those would be Texas Tech, Auburn, and Miami. So I'm very happy to see not only my teams doing well, but his teams that he took from me doing poorly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the fun. And just so you guys know, we drafted 11 teams in order in a snake draft. So obviously I drafted East Carolina with my last pick, but it goes to show you I had East Carolina pretty high in the draft and they've just been dismal. So that's the fun of a season-long draft. So Kelly, let's talk season-long. And I want to just talk this chart because people talk bubble burst all the time. And if you watch TV, people think, oh, you're off your first loss, it's bubble burst. And I've shared this chart for each of the last couple years. To me, every college football team at the beginning of August goes into camp and says, we have a chance to make a bowl. So what happens if you are off the loss and it's your 7th loss? So for 99% of the people, bowl eligibility is now gone. You have the rare occasion where Rutgers or a team gets in with 5 wins because of the APR grades. But if you blindly play every team that has 7 losses and they're off a loss, they are 44.6%. So you're 55.4% betting against them. If you exclude game 12, and why is that important? Well, game 12 is your rivalry game. People get up for that final game of the season. Kelly, you gave the perfect example for the show. It doesn't matter how many wins Kansas has. When Kansas is playing Kansas State, the final game of the season, they are up and ready to play. So this chart has week by week. It also has on the bottom how teams do with their 7th loss as a home favorite, home dog, away favorite, away dog. But the telling thing is this. When teams have 7 losses and you're excluding game 12, if you faded every college football team since 2010, with the exclusion of the COVID season, you have won 57.2%. That is one of the best records I've ever given for any chart here on the show, going back since 2010 with the sample size. So it's clearly something I rarely ever play against. I'll either fade those teams on the 7th loss or not play the game. By the way, Sam Houston plays UTEP on Wednesday night, and UMass plays Army. Those are the 2 teams this week.
Oh, yeah, Sam Houston. It's been a rough one. I don't understand why they keep getting listed as a favorite and then keep losing outright. But that is another topic for another day. Ralph, you have 4 systems for us this week in college football.
Well, the first is, how do teams do off a shutout win, and they're now on the conference road, and the line is between plus 9.5 and minus 10.5. So basically the line's between the 10s, excluding big favorites, excluding big dogs. That applies to Troy and LSU next week. LSU on a bye this week. Those teams have gone 55 and 26, 67.9%. So Troy, conference road, off a shutout win, lines between 9.5 favorite and 10.5 point dog, 68%. System 2, you're off a conference win and you're a double-digit conference home dog. Obviously, you're a weak team if you're a double-digit conference home dog or you're playing a superior team. You did win your last game. This goes back since 2018. Those teams, 39 and 79, 33.1%. So the 2 teams that are off a conference win and are now a double-digit conference home dog, the Rice-Eccles and the Wisconsin Badgers. So this system says to fade Rice and fade Wisconsin. System 3, if you guys watch my NFL segment, you guys know how much I hate the word revenge and blindly using it. But in college football, going back all the way to 2008, if you lost each of your last 2 games against this opponent as a favorite, and now you're on the road as an away favorite or a dog to 15. So the only thing we're excluding are dogs of 15 points and higher. You're off back-to-back games, losing to your opponent as a favorite. You've got 94 and 56, 62.7%. So in this system, you have double revenge off a loss as a favorite. That, to me, is legitimate revenge. This says to play on Western Michigan, Iowa State, and North Carolina, all 3 of those teams with double revenge off a loss as a favorite. And the 4th and final, how do teams do off a loss as a double-digit favorite, and now they're a dog from +3 to +17. So I'm excluding a favorite, a small dog, and a huge dog of 17.5 or more. There's only one team this past week that is off a loss as a double-digit favorite, and I think they blew a 28 or 29 to nothing lead. Those teams 26 and 41, 38.8%. That says to fade Colorado. So again, all of these will be in the PDF. System 1, play on Troy and LSU. System 2, fade Rice, fade Wisconsin. System 3, play on Western Michigan, Iowa State, North Carolina. And Systems 4 says to fade Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes.
All right. One of those I didn't like too much for my best bet at the end of the show, Ralph, but I'm not going to let that discourage me just yet. Again, make sure you guys head over to wagertalk.com, wt.buzz/RM, and you can get all of Ralph's TNA PDFs as well as his 5% best bet up for this weekend. All right, guys, I know I called you during the pre-production meeting on Monday, and I had a real talk with you, and I said, all right, I'm done with these chihuahuas. It is week 9 of college football. We need big double-digit underdogs, so both of you guys brought some heavy hitters this week that I agree with. Marco, I'll let you have the floor first, because yours is just a little bit bigger than Joe's.
just a little bit. All right, Kelly, we are going to look at USC in California. Now, when you look at this USC team, it's like watching the movie Groundhog Day, only the Lincoln Riley edition. And it's the same thing. His team score a ton of points. They can't stop anybody, as evidenced by last week's game when they were looking to bounce back at home against Utah. Now they're on the road. Here's a team that had the Heisman Trophy favorite coming into the season. All the expectations, that's why he came back. He wanted to get to the national championship playoffs and all of that. Well, here we are. We're not out of October, and they've got 2 losses. How does this team pick themselves up to play this game? They're going to travel to California, who's had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. This is one of those little brother, big brother games. I talk about it all the time. I love looking at the little brother in the Battle of California here. Anytime a team plays USC or UCLA, the underdog, the smaller school's going to want to get the job done. But how does USC, they've got nothing to play for. They can't protect Caleb Williams. And I'll tell you what, at some point, we see it in bowl games. Who is going to be the first superstar to shut it down before the regular season's over if they're out of it whenever you got all your stock in the NFL coming up next? I cannot back USC in this spot. They cannot stop anybody. And if they're going to play a game, it's going to be next week. I could have put this game in the sandwich spot as well, coming off of Notre Dame and Utah and Washington on deck. But I know Kelly wanted a big dog. I brought her a big dog. It's Cal plus the points. Let's do a little bit of a sprinkle, but I love me those 10.5 points.
Joe, I owe you an apology. I opened up the Wager Talk odds screen, and your dog is actually bigger than Marco's dog. And I should have known that because I'm on both of them this weekend.
You know what they say, every point matters.
Oh, boy.
So let's, I'm just saying, why don't we head to Tulane, one of my favorite teams this year, in which we have, of course, cashed a few tickets on. In fact, it was a best bet just a couple of weeks ago. However, I think the market is overreacting here a little bit to our friends from Rice. 11 is this number, and we just saw Rice that I thought was an extremely impressive win there against Tulsa. They never trailed. They were a dog going into Tulsa, and they never, ever, that game was never in doubt with Rice, and JT Daniels has really figured it out there. He is throwing the ball all over the place. 17 touchdowns, just 5 picks this season for Rice. And Tulane, while they have a pretty good run defense, which is to be expected, they always have a pretty good run defense, they're not necessarily great in pass coverage. In fact, giving up close to 275 yards a game here. I think this number is way over the top. In fact, I think outside of the Texas game for Rice, they've only lost one game. The largest difference between them and that next team was 13 points. You're asking Tulane to beat Rice, who's going to be able to throw the ball all over the yard on them, to cover by 11. I think that's absurd. Plus, Rice 3-0 against the number as an underdog so far. And I think not only do they cover this game, but I think there's a pretty good shot this is going to come down to the final possession. And do not be surprised if Rice ends up walking away with the outright win here. So I'll take the 11. I'll also take Rice on the money line. I love Tulane. I don't love them in this spot. Give me Rice.
Oh, betting against Tulane. But boy, do I love Rice. That team was good to me against Houston in a very similar spot. Joe, we're going to kick it right back to you because it's, well, time to fade yourself.
Yes, it is. The old public. Let's take a look at the public here, and I'll give you 3 guesses as to who the public is going to love this week. And yes, we're already starting to see the love for Ohio State, who now, coming after that Penn State game, has to travel to Camp Randall. Not exactly an easy place to play, but you do have Ohio State, has won the last 9 straight up, 7-2 against the number versus Wisconsin. They've kind of owned them here over this stretch here. And in fact, I believe it was more than 50 points or so, just an absolute smackdown in Columbus last year. They outgained them, they out-muscled them, they out-everything them last year. So we do have a little bit of revenge on our mind. We also have the kid lock-in as Mordecai is out now. So you watched them last week, a great come-from-behind win, 25-21. Our good friend, I was at the book with CT Betts there and watching him curse for the first, 3.5 quarters of that game. And then all of a sudden, it was never in doubt. Well, I can tell you this. They did a great job, Ohio State, defensively against Penn State's mediocre offense at best. And I would even argue that maybe that's being too generous for what Penn State brings to the table. Ohio State's offense, though, the one thing I pulled from that game, they're not good. This is not your typical or what you would expect from Ryan Day and from Ohio State this year. I do not like the offense of Ohio State. They have absolutely no passing game they should have a much better passing game than they do. We've also seen Ohio State struggle the last 3 years. The game after Penn State, they're yet to cover a game, and now they're in a spot getting a whole, 2 touchdowns, over 2 touchdowns here. I think Brandon Allen, it's going to be handoff left, handoff right. They are going to force them in order to be able to stop the run, Wisconsin. I think this is a tough spot after a big win against Penn State last week for Ohio State. I don't think Wisconsin wins, but we know the public is going to love themselves some Ohio State in this spot. I do not. I think Wisconsin getting over 2 touchdowns is the way to go in this game.
I haven't decided if I think Ohio State loses this game outright or not, but that's okay. We'll touch on that here at the end of the show. It's about lunchtime here on the East Coast, Marco, and luckily for me, the deli's open.
Yeah, Kelly, the deli is open, and all I got to say to Joe is if he is wrong on that play, I can't wait to see the post-game interview from Ryan Day when he calls you out like he did Lou Horton's.
That's a solid point. He hears everything. Everything.
But the deli is open this week, guys, and we are going to take a look. And I think this is a juicy sandwich. I think even Kelly's going to want to order this one. We're not out of October, and yet Clemson is out of the conversation for the national championship. Just the fact that they are a favorite this week on the road after losing last week in overtime. I love fading overtime losers that are favored the next week. So that would have had me looking at NC State already. Throw in, it was their 3rd loss of the season for Clemson, and all of their goals are done. How does Dabo Swinney get this team up? If he's going to get them up, guess when it's going to be? It's going to be next week when they play host to Notre Dame. That's the game they're looking for. So that's the sandwich of this one. And then we've got NC State. And I realize NC State stunk it up the last time they were on a football field. That was 2 weeks ago when they went to Duke. and laid a complete egg, losing 24-3. But you know what? They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. They'll get the wrinkles out. They'll have some new, maybe a couple tricks up their sleeve for Clemson. And again, I'm getting a home dog that has a decent defense against a team that I just don't know if they are going to have the right frame of mind to be laying points on the road to an NC State team. Let's go ahead and take them. The only concern, and it's a big one with NC State because they've done it 3 times already this year, is don't turn the football over. They've had 3 games where they've had 3 turnovers in a game. Keep a clean game, they win this one outright. Even a couple turnovers, I think they cover the spread. Give me NC State plus the points, and I'm going to go on record. I got them pulling the upset, 27-24.
Ooh, Marco. NC State did make my long list like second from the bottom. Maybe I need to look at them just a little bit harder, thanks to you. We're going to send you guys away, and we are going to bring in AceVR, great gambler, and for some of that college football gold. But first, I wanted to share with you guys his 30-day all-access pass plus his conference calls. That means you get a real-time service. You get weekly video calls with him to discuss his handicapping strategies and proper bankroll management. Plus, you get his #1 in total profit, #1 all-time in MLB, boxing, #1 all-time in MMA, #2 WNBA, #2 college football, #2 golf, #3 NFL, #3 soccer. Oh my gosh, the list keeps going on and on. 30-day all-access pass. Right now, Wager Talk, just $199. Let's bring him in and see what he's got for some of that gold.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to dive right in because I have a ton of stuff to share with you guys. First, let's start off college football. But before we dive in, got to go backwards because I don't want the information to harm anyone. I want you to be able to use it to profit or at least stop you from placing a negative EV bet. And why I bring that up is, remember last week, I shared Marshall as one of the bigger bets. Multiple groups had bet them. It was that weekday game plus 4.5, and the money line. Well, if you looked on Thursday at noon Pacific, it was down to 3.5, even though the public was on the favor, which is a good sign for us bettors. But about an hour before kickoff, what do you see? At the sharpest outs, it's up to 5.5. At that point, you've got to be able to conclude that the +4 is no longer any good. And if you dug a little deeper, you would have found that Rasheen Ali, the running back, was ruled out for undisclosed reasons. And that just adjusted the line significantly. And obviously, we had placed our bet. So it's not like I could call the bookie and say, hey, I was just kidding about that. I didn't really mean Marshall. So it's in. But hopefully you guys saw that and didn't get burned. With that said, let's dive right in because I have a ton of information. Let me get you the passing success rates. Top 5 in college football. Offensively, Oklahoma, LSU, Michigan, Oregon, Washington in order. Top 5 defense, Texas, Utah, Notre Dame, Alabama, Penn State. Top 10 in both, none in college football. Top 20 in both, we have Notre Dame, Florida State, Oklahoma, and Michigan. So metrics-wise, those teams are exceeding expectations. As far as power ratings go, Michigan, Ohio State, and Georgia are top 3 in different orders with some guys, but they're within 2.5 points of each other, less than a field goal. So those are the 3 best teams in college football. Here is the steam we've already gotten down on. I will split it between sides and totals so we don't get confused. Let's get the totals out of the way first. Start off with Houston, Penn State. We're going over 46. Houston, Kansas State over 59. And then Indiana, Penn State over 46. That's over 59 in Houston, over 46 in Penn State. Drop down to Western Michigan, Eastern Michigan over 46. Miami, Ohio over 39. A lot of overs in college football. Southern Miss, Appalachian State over 55. Washington Huskies, Stanford over 60. And I saved the strongest for last. That's Ohio State, Wisconsin over 43, 43.5, 44. Multiple groups got down on that one. I would circle that as the strongest of the group. And also keep your eye out on San Jose State and Hawaii. There's a number they're looking for on the under. Just follow line movement. You'll see if it triggers or not. That's what we're looking at as far as totals go. Let's knock out some sides. And like I said, whether you follow, fade, or ignore, my goal is to help you make money. That's the only reason I'm sharing this information. Let's move on to the sides. First, Sam Houston, weekday game, -3. Multiple groups hit that even lane, -115 to 120 to get that -3. And the last weekday game, Charlotte +5.5, Charlotte +5. Let's move on to Saturday sides. Chalky, Penn State, -30, -31. UCF, -6.5. That's why you're looking at that key number of 7. So far, did not buy the 7. So that sticks out to me a little bit. Kansas State, -16.5. Western Michigan, multiple groups, money line. Western Michigan -1, Western Michigan -1.5, 2, 2.5, 3. Check for injuries in that game. Michigan State, +7.5. No surprise, got shut out 49-0. Those of you that are in the steam room, you understand we look for those extremes. So no surprise seeing the betting syndicates doing the exact same thing. And finally, Purdue +3 and Nevada at a pick'em. That's going to do it for college football. I'll be back with the NFL. Got a lot of gold to share there.
Thank you to VR at Greek_Gambler over on Twitter. He is one of the best at giving us all that free gold. I missed the leprechaun, Ace. We need to get that back because that is what he is, kind of, except he's taller. Anyway, that being said, we're done with the show. It's time for best bets. And Joe Raineri, well, he already alluded to my best bet. Maybe he should have, kind of checked the Slack channel. I would never do that to Marco. That being said, I still haven't decided if Wisconsin can win this game outright. You guys will have to see my parlay with Superbook Sports. What I have decided is 14.5 points is entirely too many for a Badgers team at night under those bright lights, coming off a horrific come-from-behind win at Illinois and Ohio State, as Joe said, off that big win over Penn State. But was it really that big of a win? Sure, the Buckeyes defense prevented the Nittany Lions from converting basically any third down attempts, and Penn State barely made it into the end zone except for that garbage time touchdown. So they looked like a better version of themselves. I'm not sold on Ryan Day. I'm not sold on the Buckeyes. I like Wisconsin getting 2 touchdowns here at home. Luke Fickell, I know that is your alma mater, but maybe just try to press one time here for us. We'll see how it goes with the money line, but for sure, taking the 14.5. Marco, week 9, college football. Give me your best bet.
All right, Kelly, we are going to go right back to the scene of the crime last week. We covered by 0.5 point with Air Force. And as Joe says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm coming right back with it. And our college best bets have been money here on the show. We lost the first week, and we've had nothing but winners since. And speaking of winners, we've got a special offer going at Wager Talk right now. It's a site-wide special. It's not supposed to start till November 1st. But I had Gianni put it up early so I could get it to all of our Bet On It viewers. You don't have to wait till November 1st. Get the rest of 2023. That's every sport from your favorite capper. We're in the heart of football season, college and pro. Where hockey has started. NBA is underway. You get it all. By the way, my NBA plays, the last 3 seasons, I'm the number 1 ranked handicapper at Wager Talk in Money One in NBA. You'll get everything. Now, let's get to what you're here for, and that is my best bet. I am going to take Air Force as they travel to Colorado State. And I know the knee-jerk reaction is going to look at this Colorado State, look at their last 2 games. They had a 31-30 victory over Boise State on this field, and last week exchanged field goals back and forth in the final minute and a half of the game, had the lead, only to see UNLV come back and beat them at the horn. I don't see how Colorado State gets up for this game totally. Yeah, I know Air Force is coming in undefeated, but they're coming off of 2 barn burner games, and this Air Force team, you know why I like them. It's tough to defend the option. In Colorado State, yeah, they'll see it every year, but as we say, in college football anymore, there's so much turnover with the transfer portal. that it's like learning to try to stop it over brand new every year. And they've only got a week to do it. Last week, Air Force only scored 17 points, but they were facing a team that knows how to stop the option in Navy. But defensively, they totally put the clamps on Navy in that game last week, totally dominating them. They had less than 150 yards of offense in that game, did Navy. I like Air Force to roll. Colorado State cannot stop the run. And that's the key to this game, because Air Force is going to run it, and run it some more. And as I said, when you're laying points with a running team, that's great for protecting the lead in the fourth quarter, because you do what you do best, and nobody does it better than Air Force. I'll go ahead and take them. Colorado State, I talked about that running game in that defense. They're ranked 107th at yards per play allowed and 126th at points per game allowed. Give me Air Force. I've got them winning big, 41-20. Let's keep this best bet winning streak rolling along.
Can't believe Marco would do my Colorado State Rams like that. That team has been so good to me, Marco. I might need to take a second look at them there after playing UNLV in a heartbreaker. Joe Raineri, you're last, but you're certainly not least. Who's your best bet?
No, coming off of last week's Ole Miss is a 6.5-point favorite, smacking down Auburn, who, it seems to be a theme here, could not score. And sure enough, they could not score enough points to handle the offense of Ole Miss. And now I take you to this week with Tennessee taking on Kentucky. And as Marco has said now a couple of times, if it ain't broke, we ain't fixing it. Tennessee, this has been about as one-sided a rivalry as there is in the SEC. Kentucky has been owned by Tennessee here, and I do not see this changing here. The Kentucky Wildcats, great rushing team, unless, of course, they're playing really good defenses. And in fact, the last couple that they have played, and the only two above-average defenses they have played have been Georgia and Missouri. And Georgia held them to what? About 185 yards in that game. Mizzou held them to only 21 points. And now here comes Tennessee, who, by the way, outgained Alabama by almost 50 yards in that game. In fact, they were leading 20-7 going into the break. And then a scoop and score, a fumble recovery for a TD was really the difference in Tennessee getting that cover. But I don't see that being a problem here, because what are the Wildcats going to do if they can't run the ball? And by the way, this Tennessee defense is right smack in the middle between Georgia and what Mizzou's defense is. They are an elite defense, especially when it comes to the secondary. So if you're not going to be able to run as effectively, they only average about 55 plays a game here, Cal. While we all know Josh Heupel in Tennessee, guess what they love to do? Run a lot of plays, anywhere between 70 to 75 a game. That means that Kentucky defense, which is decent, but they're going to be out on that field an awful lot in this game. I don't think Tennessee has to do anything extraordinary in this game. Get me to 24, 27, 28 points, and that's going to be enough to cover this game at 3.5 right now. Kentucky's offense is limited. They are one-dimensional. This here is another elite defense in Tennessee that is going to stifle their offense. In the meantime, Tennessee is going to score enough points to not only win this, but win it by more than 3 or 3.5. Give me Tennessee as my best bet this week.
Ooh, Joe's fading the early line movement. I might have to take another look at those Kentucky Wildcats after that convincing argument. All right, guys, that is the show. As always, we hope you enjoyed it as much as we do performing it, or however that is the right word. I don't even know anymore. Ralph, Marco, Joe, VR, and myself are going to keep cashing those tickets, and you can bet on it.